So today, what I'm going to look at here is the School of Athens painting by Raphael. This painting was done in 1509 to 1511. It was commissioned by Pope Julius II. It's located in the Stanza della Stegnatura in the papal apartments or the papal palace in the Vatican. It was used as a library, and now it's like just like a tourist room to see them, but when it's used it's like an office or like some type of meeting room, but it's not used formally as much. So the room itself, the four walls, the general theme of the room is basically the four branches of human knowledge or human thought. The four branches, one of them being justice, and this is one of the walls here. um, the next one is poetry on another wall. Poetry, more of the arts, music, writing, and then the next one would be theology and the use of the study of God. And this one, entitled "The School of Athens," is focused on philosophy, and it should be said that philosophy back then was generally it was also science. How we have extracted science from knowledge and turned science into all these smaller branches, all these smaller schools of thought. Back then, it was all the same. Philosophy is just knowledge. It is not different segments of knowledge. It is a wholly encompassing knowledge. So that's why philosophy is seen here as in the four branches of human thinking. So right off the bat, well, let's take a look at architecture. Just get that out of the way. This is a more Roman. All these guys here are basically Greeks. They're also pagan, by the way. So that's very significant to have back then during the Renaissance. This shift of over zealotry, this shift of massive prosecution of religious thinking and stuff like that. Pope Julius wanted to be known as a pope that was also very intelligent, a thinking type of pope, a philosopher type of pope. So, going on the architecture again, this is more of a Roman architecture here. It would mostly be indicative because of these barrel vaulted ceilings. You can see here how they have these hexagon pattern and square patterns throughout them. So this is more of a Roman architecture here, but most of these guys are Greeks, and like I said, they're all pagans as well, which is very interesting since this is located in the Vatican. And going on with the architecture, I'll get into these statues here in a moment. So if we look at the linear perspective, the focal point, we can see the lines drawing up to these two figures here in the middle. If you want to be very specific, the focal point would be here on this guy's hand. Who these two figures are, we have on the left side we have Plato, and on the right side we have Aristotle. In their hands, Plato is holding his book Timaeus, and Aristotle is holding his book Ethics. And what Plato was doing here is he's pointing up, and we could see Aristotle is, pretty much pointing down. We get that as above, so below type of idea. But more significantly is that Plato himself was focused on more ethereal knowledge, knowledge of the heavens, of untangible, otherworldly, different dimensional type of thinking. And in contrast to him was Aristotle, who was basically focused on knowledge of what you can touch, what you can see, feel, hear, smell, things that only were focused on the five senses and more earthly, so that's why he's pointing down. Plato pointing up to the heavens, signifying his more ethereal schools of thought or ideology. Um, and this is also contrasted by what they're wearing, the colors that they're wearing. Plato is wearing red and purple, signifying purple as air or ether, however you want to pronounce it. Red as fire, and those two things are untangible. You can't touch them. You can't really see them. I mean, you can see fire, but you get the point I'm trying to make here. They're otherworldly substances, and Aristotle is wearing blue for water and brown for earth. So he's wearing the colors of more tangible, seeable, feelable things. So they're the focal point here. And how this painting is generally seen is by in two ways: on the left side and on the right side. The left side is more focused towards the Platonic school of thought, and the right side is more focused on the Aristotle type of thought. This can also be signified by the statues we see up here. This is Apollo. Apollo being significant for the a god of music, thus him holding the harp here, for the arts, and so more representing the Platonic type of ideology of ethereal knowledge. And on the right side here we have Athena. Athena being the goddess of war and wisdom. So she's more focused on the earthly type of thought. So you can see how these two sides are contrasted using those two figures. Um, and also, again, this being in the Vatican, having pagan gods depicted it was a big deal back then. So Pope Julius II was really making a statement with this. So let's take a look at some of the figures here. Down in the corner, this guy right here, this is Pythagoras, and Pythagoras, of course, is a genius mathematician. He is on the left side because he was more about the abstract type of math, especially in music and the study of harmony. Where you believe that the planets that orbit, that go around the Earth, each have their own note that they emit their own sound. And so he's more of a Platonic type of thinking, more abstract mathematics, and he's contrasted on the other side here by Euclid, most notably known for his geometric mathematics. He's more focused on the tangible, fine tuning of lines and linear type of mathematics. So that's why he's portrayed on the right side here. Let's take a look at the middle here. It's very interesting. Like in my last video, I pointed out the use of like the triangle, how things are kind of focused on a triangle. And here we can see the middle walkway is quite barren other than these two figures here, and the way that they're seated makes it like a triangle. The reason, I guess I didn't talk about that in my last video, but I'll point it out now. So the use of a triangle, the triangular shape in paintings, especially in Renaissance time, was that if you see a triangle, it's very structured, it's sturdy, and it also helps to point out certain things. If you have a painting that uses more of a think of like an upside down triangle, right? When you see an upside down triangle, it looks like it's going to fall over. And that's not a very good way of depicting something in a 2D platform. So especially if you look at Leonardo da Vinci's work, you'll see the use of this triangular type of shape in basically everything he does. You can see it a lot in The Last Supper. The Mona Lisa, same thing. So it's very triangular. At least triangular in the way that to draw your attention to something, or to use it as a structured, like a portrait. A portrait will be triangular type of shape, to make it look stronger. So these two figures here, this guy right here, I'm a big fan. Diogenes. Diogenes is he's a cynic. Cynic, the word cynic comes from the Greek word for dog. And cynics, Diogenes specifically, he rejected all his worldly possessions. He lived on the streets. That's one of the reasons why they called them dogs, is because they lived what they considered a very, uh, unhumanly type of way. He was a critic of everything. He despised the way that humanity was, and he would point at things with his middle finger. He would point at whatever with his middle finger, which is very strange. If you do that yourself, it's very strange doing that, and it seems like a harsher way of doing it. So it's very interesting that he would do that. He would also urinate on people that made him angry or would make fun of him or whatever. So a cynic, great. There was only two ways of seeing Diogenes. It was either you loved him or you hated him. And if I was back then, I would have loved this guy. I would have absolutely adored him. He was probably one of the greatest philosophers out there. I mean, he lived the very idea of what a cynic would be. Here we have Heraclitus. He's a philosopher. Don't know too much about him, but what I am going to point out about him is that his overall look to him, his overall stance here. He's more contemplative, looking down, kind of in self-thought. The reason for this is because he is modeled after Michelangelo, who at that time was painting the Sistine Chapel. And Michelangelo was known as more of a self-brooding, inward-thinking individual. So that's why Raphael depicted him as such. So, and this wasn't actually added until after this whole thing was finished. So this was a blank area, and then he added some plaster on to put Michelangelo or Heraclitus in. So on this side here we have, this is Ptolemy, and he was more of he talked about the globe Earth as the center of the Earth, or the center of the universe. And this is Zoroaster, and here he is holding a sphere of the stars. I don't really want to get into that stuff, but what I am going to point out here is that this is Raphael himself. So like I mentioned in my last video, is that in a lot of paintings, especially during the Renaissance, they would paint themselves in that painting somewhere, somehow, some way. Something interesting that I also want to point out here is this column on the right side. It's quite indicative of the chakra system that you would see taught a lot in Eastern philosophies. If we consider these to be the overall appearance is very Kundalini-esque. We have the twin snakes, the DNA type of helical shape. If these were the legs, and this is the spinal column, here we can see something that looks like the kidneys, but they're actually flowers, but they look like kidneys. Here we have two snakes with two doves. The downward facing dove is generally understood to be the Holy Spirit coming down to earth. This flower would probably be the heart chakra here, the throat chakra, and this is probably the crown chakra with the third eye here, splitting the head right here in half, up and down, left and right, and then we have the top of the head ending with the crown chakra here. So the understanding is there. I mean, it's quite apparent, to be honest. And yeah, so about at the 15-minute mark, this is a very beautiful, unbelievable craftsmanship and skill required to do this. I recommend looking at these paintings and enjoying them, hopefully in real life if you can.